Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into an author's analysis of 5 very common, but in his view, totally mistaken approaches to faith and politics. Now, this is one of those topics that's got a long, super complicated history, so let's just get right into the source material and see what it's all about. You know, the relationship between religious belief and government, it's got to be one of the most debated questions in all of history, right? I mean, how much should faith actually influence the law? Should it have any influence at all? Okay, so let's dive right into this by exploring some of the common perspectives that are outlined in the source we're looking at. So the way our source material kicks things off is by framing this whole challenge as, well, as a puzzle. The author basically says, look, we're going to examine 5 different viewpoints that I believe are fundamentally mistaken, and only then, after we've looked at those, will he propose what he thinks is a more balanced solution. All right, so first up, the author presents these 2 polar opposite extremes. But, and this is key, he argues they're actually 2 sides of the very same coin. We're going to start with the first one, the idea that it is the government's job to enforce one particular faith on everybody. This first viewpoint, it's called the compel religion view, and it's exactly what it sounds like. The belief that the state should force people to follow a certain religion. And let me tell you, this is not a new idea. It's a concept with some really deep and often really bloody historical roots. And as the author points out, history is just littered with conflicts that came from this exact view. I mean, you've got the 30 Years' War in Europe, the entire reason the Pilgrims fled to America in the first place. The attempt to compel religion has so often led to violence and persecution. But what's interesting is that it also, kind of ironically, spurred these powerful movements toward religious freedom, like what Thomas Jefferson was doing in Virginia. So the author's main critique of this view really comes down to theology. He basically argues that genuine faith, true faith, simply cannot be forced. By its very nature, it has to be a voluntary choice. If it's not, well, then it's not real faith at all. Okay, so if that's one extreme, let's swing all the way to the other side of the pendulum. This is the exclude religion view, and this one argues that religion has absolutely no place, none, in public life, in political debate, or in any government decisions. So the author really sets these up as 2 radical opposite poles. With the compel view, you've got the state basically controlling the church, but with the exclude view, you have the state trying to completely silence the church and any kind of religious reasoning from public life, creating what some people call a naked public square. And according to our source, the really crucial point here is that this all comes down to a misinterpretation of the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment. The author argues that this view twists the whole idea of freedom of religion into a demand for freedom from religion. And those are 2 very, very different things. Okay, let's move on to the third viewpoint. And this one's maybe the most radical of all. This is the idea that government power isn't just, flawed or corruptible. No, it's that government itself is inherently evil and is actually under demonic control. A big proponent of this view is the theologian Greg Boyd, and he's the one quoted in our source with that pretty provocative statement. His whole argument at its core is that anytime you use power over other people, which, let's be honest, is kind of the definition of government, that power is demonic in nature. But the author of our source material, he pushes back on this, and he pushes back hard. He argues that Boyd's entire case is built on one thing, taking Satan's claims in the Bible as the literal truth. And the author's response is, wait a minute, the Bible itself calls Satan a liar, and other parts of Scripture explicitly say that God is the one who establishes governments. And for his Exhibit A, the author points to passages like Romans 13. This scripture suggests that government is actually meant to be an instrument of God, a tool for maintaining order and punishing wrongdoers, not some invention of Satan. All right, now let's get into the final 2 views that the author says are mistaken, and he presents these 2 as a kind of false choice, this idea that you have to pick between spiritual action and political action. So this 4th perspective, it basically argues for a total withdrawal from politics. The focus here is laser sharp. Christians should only be concerned with preaching the gospel and evangelism. Period. They shouldn't be trying to change society through government at all. But again, the author builds a logical case against this. He kind of lays it out like this. If Christians are called to love their neighbor and to do good for everyone, well, isn't influencing government to create just laws and protect people from harm a way of doing good? He argues it's a totally valid, maybe even necessary way to express that love. And now for the fifth and final view the author critiques. And it's the total opposite. We're swinging that pendulum all the way back. This is the idea that the main mission of the church is political reform. It's often linked to the social gospel movement, and it prioritizes changing laws and society structures over everything else, including personal conversion. And the author's big critique here is that this view gets things mixed up. It confuses what law can do with what the gospel is for. He argues that, yeah, good laws are great for restraining evil on the outside, but they are fundamentally powerless to actually change a person's heart on the inside. So, okay, we've just walked through 5 very different positions, right? From forcing religion on people to banning it from public life, from seeing government as totally demonic to seeing it as the ultimate solution. After all that, what's the big point? What is the author actually building toward? Well, the conclusion that the source offers is all about balance. It's about avoiding all of those extremes we just talked about. The idea is that, yes, there's a necessary and important role for political influence, to promote good and restrain evil. But, and this is a big but for the author, that activity can never, ever replace what he sees as the church's primary mission, which is evangelism. And that really leaves us with a final, pretty tough question that this whole analysis brings up. I mean, it's one thing to talk about balance in theory, right? But in the kind of polarized world we live in today, how do you actually navigate that tension between changing hearts and changing laws? What does that look like in the real world? It's definitely something to think about.